We, of course, have observed endeavors initiated by Power Cement in response to the climate agenda, and we would certainly like to hear more and be educated more in that direction. I believe one of the things which the current economic turmoil has informed us about is the role of energy pricing, and how energy pricing has come about as one of the most important elements, particularly for industrial sectors, viability and sustainability. And recent months have really ushered a scenario where mounting energy costs have actually led to closure of considerable share of industrial sector, particularly the SME segment of the industrial sector in the country. And this, of course, erodes the competitiveness, not just of a single country, but also as a region as well, how best we can respond to the energy transition, the climate agenda going forward. Talking of construction industry, we, of course, are a rapidly urbanizing country with industrial input needs as well. And the need for cement as a key construction material will be constantly increasing. And therein again, I think the homework has been cut out for all of us, how we come together to bring about some transformation in this sector. The challenge of climate change and recurrent disasters that we have faced recently as a result of climate impact, there is certainly a need for minimizing emissions. And I think all three of them, the disaster preparedness or the need of disaster preparedness, the climate impact, the goal of minimizing emissions, all of these sort of add another layer of complexity under which, of course, cement sector as well as sectors which supply other construction material are sort of confronting. So the low carbon transition discourse for the cement sector is, of course, hindered not just by this complexity, but also by long investment cycles, limited technology availability, low cost margins, and of course, a lack of financing opportunities going forward. Pakistan, of course, requires more strengthened regulatory and policy support mechanisms to facilitate this transition, not just in the cement sector, but also in other sectors producing the construction material, producing industrial inputs. And achieving this transformation really necessitates the coordination of stakeholders throughout the value chain to formulate an inclusive roadmap, delineating potential pathways, strategic plans, actions or policies which would be essential for reaching this objective. Pakistan has also recently embarked on this 5E medium-term development framework, which really puts at its very center the agenda of environmental sustainability and protection. We do see that there's a working group under this initiative which will continue to work with industry, including the stakeholders from the cement sector. Likewise, the provincial governments have come forward, and most of them now have their own climate action, climate change action plans, within which, again, the interface with industry is a key deliverable, and I'm sure that this will keep them very busy during this and the next year to chart out a plan in this direction. And then finally, of course, the developments around the special economic zones, which of course Pakistan wants to extend, or the dividends of which Pakistan wants to extend to the neighboring countries as well. The growth of these SEZs and the role of the cement sector in this growth will be pivotal. So, a more reformed sort of transition going forward is certainly in the interest of all stakeholders within the industry as well as those outside of the industry. So at the moment, it is critical to answer the question, how should the green approach for cement sector look like? And this, I believe, would be the core idea for today's lecture and discussion going forward. So I join my colleagues at STPI in welcoming all of you and look forward to a very interesting discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And definitely, you have highlighted a very pertinent points around the technological interventions and what green approach could be applied for the cement sector. And thank you for setting the tone for our discussion onwards. Now, I invite Mr. Ahsan Anis, the Chief Operating Officer of Power Cement, to share his insights. Actually, the Power Cement is one of the prominent cement industries in Pakistan who work on the sustainability initiatives like they have several ventures around wood solar energy 7 megawatt project. Along with that, the Power Cement attainment of ISO 5001 2018 certification. It also served as a mark for the energy management practices. And under these initiatives, what are your interventions and what you want to present? So over to you, Mr. Ahsan. Please allow me.
Yeah, thank you, SDPI team. Thank you, Dr. Waqar, for the insights as well. I have a short presentation, and I'll try and run it as quickly as possible. Just to give you a background, obviously, enough is said about cement and its impact, or the construction industry and its impact as well. What I actually believe is on the climate change front, I'll just start with a small anecdote, which is that while we as a nation, or we especially in Pakistan, we're very good in solving when the fire erupts, or we're very good at the firefighting aspect, but we're not very good in preventing the fire to erupt in the first place. So while we talk about climate changes and while we talk about all these events post what has been post a catastrophe, but soon we tend to forget when once the things get settled in. Also the fact that while we are very commercially focused, it's also important to educate that all these also make as much commercial sense as much as carbon reduction sense. And this has been probably one of the failures of all of us, the educated class as well, where we are unable to predict the long-term pricing or long-term forecast of something similar. Very recently, with the soaring electricity prices global in Pakistan, I think right now everybody would start making sense to invest into solar or everything, all other factors. But a few years ago, when solar was not probably that cheap, or when the electricity prices were cheaper enough, you could probably not get the same traction for solar. So what I'm trying to say is that what we need to build in ourselves is how we could predict and how we could forecast something, and then do the action right away instead of waiting for the thing to happen or waiting for the catastrophe to happen. I'll take you through the journey for Power Cement and what we are trying to do, which could probably not give us not just short-term gains around it, but also in the medium and long-term range, and might not make very commercial sense at this point in time. But what we foresee is the road to success. Just on the housekeeping side, as per Murphy law, if there could be a Wi-Fi or internet connection, I'll just try and switch if something happens. So cement, as you all mentioned, is one of those things which has been primarily used for developing any country. If you see concrete or cement derivatives, it's the second most used thing after water in the world. Nearly 500 kg per person per capita is the annual consumption for every human being. For the last 100 years, my statement is the cement is made the same way is because primary innovation or complete change in the way cement manufacturing has not happened in the last 100 years. and I'll take you through a very short video to make you understand where we stand. I'll just.
I am about to get buried in concrete. And while that's happening, I'm going to explain everything you need to know about this substance. So the first thing that I want to clear up is the difference between cement and concrete, because people often mix these up, okay? Cement is like the glue. It's the matrix of stuff. Oh, there, I feel it. Okay, that feels good. Now, concrete is cement plus aggregate, so plus gravel and sand, and this is filling up really rather quickly. Cement is the most important man-made substance on the planet. We use more of it than any other substance apart from water. Every year, 500 kilograms of cement are created for every man, woman, and child on Earth. And that amount of cement can make 2 cubic meters of concrete, which is about 2 of these big fish bowls.
This video is sponsored by Wren. I don't think people realize just how important concrete is, so here's another way to think about it. Every year we make a certain weight of goods out of copper, more out of aluminum, and then you have glass, asphalt, lime, iron is a big one for all the steel, and then there's ceramic and wood. But by far, the solid product we make the most of is cementitious material, essentially cement. We use as much of it as we do all other materials combined. And it's easy to see why. Concrete is liquid rock. You can pour it into any shape you like. It's strong and durable and inexpensive, and it is so easy to produce that people have been making a version of it for thousands of years.
I am about to.
So what I wanted to present was that this this cement and concrete has been made the same way for a long period of time. It's very inexpensive, and it is extremely high usage across the world. What it poses right now is that it is responsible for almost 7 to 8% of all global emission. So when I try to explain to you is that the global carbon emission for 2019 was 33 GT of carbon dioxide, CO2. And out of that, cement itself, the entire value chain was responsible for approximately 3 gigatouches of carbon footprint. And cement itself manufacturing was approximately 7%. So the problem statement is a thing is being used at extremely high level, and that is also responsible for a very high emission rate. And the fact that there has been no significant change into the way we produce, we will continue to do that and continue to do that in a negative way. So what has happened around in the world for a couple of decades when these climate related challenges were better explained, what has happened is that there are 4 ways in the way people have attributed or people have tried to solve these issues. So the 4 or 5 ways the way cement is decarbonizing is that the first is the energy efficiency on making the product or making the plant more and more energy efficient. So that technology keeps on improving, and every year the plants which are making cement are getting better and better. The second is use of alternative fuel instead of coal or to heat up the cement plant. And that probably accounts for around 35 to 40% of the carbon emissions. Obviously, it has no impact on customers because the way the cement is produced will be similar, but it has an impact on the way on the manufacturing cost. Then the third is the clinker substitution factor. And I'll just take a second and explain you what substitution is. The fact that clinker itself is the main raw material behind cement, and the clinker will be responsible for most of the carbon emission. So people are coming up with new and new ways of substituting clinker with other novel substances, other like fly ash or pozzolana. The fourth is completely different way of making cement itself. and when I go to that slide, I'll probably explain that, but that could change 90 to 100% of the impact. Obviously, that is still in very initial stages, and the technology has not been proven across the world. The last is that we continue to make it in the same bad way. We continue to do the same way of making cement, but in the end, we install a carbon capture or storage unit in which we are able to get the carbon footprint reduction by capturing the carbon emissions. So again, so that does not change the way we operate, but eventually have a high investment at the end product side where you capture this stuff. That has been happening around in Europe right now, where the laws are very strict. So, they want to do it as soon as possible. So this is one of those ways. But so on energy efficiency side, there has been, past 50, 60 years, the companies have started to, all the cement manufacturing plant owners have started to make better and better, which uses less and less amount of heat to produce and less amount of energy to produce the same ton of cement which everyone else is producing. On the power cement side, because our plant is a brand new 7,700 ton European technology plant, which was installed just 3 years ago. So our plant obviously has been, we've achieved that, the low hanging fruit around that. So just to give you a context, the electric energy needed per ton of cement production, the old technologies used to have around 80 to 100, 90 to 100 kilowatt hours for every ton of cement. The industry benchmark in Pakistan, based on our research, is between 85 to 90. Our power cement itself, because it's a brand new European plant and already the energy efficiencies have been incorporated in that, so it operates around between 82 to 85 kilowatt. On the thermal energy side, which is the coal consumption for every coal heating for every ton of clinker, that's around industry. The technologies, it could be as high. The old technologies were as high as 900, even 900 kilocals. The industry average is between 740 to 780. Since it's the latest technology plant, we've been able to capture and bring it down to even 700 kilocals. What I'm trying to explain is that for the same amount of cement or clinker to be produced, a brand new cement plant or a good technology cement plant would be able to reduce those around 4 to 5%. And that has been already captured within the power cement umbrella. And what I want to see is it's just not power cement. Any new plant coming in from now on will continue to get better from the old technologies. So anyone who's installing a brand new cement plant right now will have a better electrical consumption and better thermal energy consumption as well. But what has happened in the world is that while we travel to all these OEMs as well, is that there is a plateau effect, or there's a barrier. This cannot be reduced after a certain point in time. So this cannot be made, say 300 kilocals or 50 kWh. There is the best in plant right now even would be around 75 to 80, and the thermal energy would be between 680 to 700. So even the brand new plant right now in globally available. So there is an effect that you cannot improve this more. So, and you will continue to, spend this much amount of electricity and this much amount of coal to make the same amount of clinker. On the second side is the electrical consumption side. The electrical consumption, which is basically how do you source that electric consumptions? So what most of the cement players in Pakistan historically did were that they had their own captive-based power plants. Initially based on natural gas when natural gas was available, but then subsequently a lot of players, not just in cement, but a lot of players in high energy intensive manufacturing in Pakistan went with captive-based power plants of coal itself. So they now not only use coal to give heating to their cement plants, but also coal to produce electricity. What we did differently, and again, what we had as a mindset was that we need to be more green, and obviously more in the long run also become more cost effective. So around our demand at our own cement plant is around 35 megawatt, out of which through the waste heat recovery, which most of the cement plants in Pakistan now have adapted, it's producing electricity from the heat itself generated from the plant. So for that, that gives us around 9 to 10 megawatt of electricity. What we've done is also a 7 megawatt solar to augment that waste heat recovery. And what we're trying to do in the next 1 year is that while we are situated in very close to the Jhampir wind corridor, so our own wind mast reading says that our wind data denotes that we will have very good wind speed available within our plant. So what we want to become is the first ever captive solar and wind hybrid power plant within our premises. So you will often see that there are wind power plants and solar power plants as IPPs. In Pakistan, there is no IPP, even an IPP, which is a hybrid between solar and wind both, let alone a captive consumer doing it ourselves. But what we have embarked is a journey where our solar is right now installed, but what we foresee is the wind also being installed in a few years from now. So that would approximately cover 60% of our energy needs through reliable sources. And coming back to my first statement, why this is also cost effective is that solar, wind, or the waste heat recovery does not have an operating cost going forward. So what you could feel is that 10 years from now, 7 years from now, the energy prices, whatever they are, the solar will still be giving you electricity the same way because there's no operating cost. So if somebody was doing this calculation, say 4 years ago, they would not have imagined the tariff right now to become 45, because the way accountants or analysts or every forecasting CFOs in the company evaluate is that every year electricity price will go up by 10%. And then if that was the case, the electricity prices would not have gone to what they are right now. So what I'm trying to say is that you have to take that plunge or leap of faith where all these sources, what we wanted to do was not being dependent on any variable cost at all. So once you invest, then you're locked in for the next 20 years. Obviously, these all three things together, I've just shown how much they would be saving in terms of carbon emissions in the next 20 years. Approximately 1 million tons. The solar, wind, and WHRS combined together. The solar and just to repeat, the solar and the waste heat recovery is already running right now. Now coming back to the second aspect, this is the energy efficiency side, where we just to recap, where we covered that the plant is the low-hanging fruits were the energy efficiency side, the kilocals or the coal consumption and efficiency side, which we've already covered, and the sourcing of electricity side, which we are already embarking on the journey. But that still leaves us with the 60% usage of coal itself for making cement and clinker. What has happened globally is that all the companies in the world have started to move towards alternative fuels. If I show you on the next slide, globally right now around 17 to 18%, and target is to replace coal by 30% of fuel, 30% with other fuels. Other fuels include all the agricultural waste, the domestic waste, the forestry waste, also the oil waste as well. And so these waste will replace coal consumption in cement plants. Across the world, obviously, this is more developed in the European market, where the conversion from coal to other alternative fuels has been as high as 70 to 80%. I myself have witnessed few plants in Slovakia and in Europe where even the consumption was 90% was converted from coal to other biofuels and other waste. But sadly, in Pakistan and even like India and developing countries across nearby, we still rely almost 95 to 97% on coal to burn our to produce or give us heat. Pakistan, based on our estimate, is less than 1%. Alternative fuel used less than 1%. A few experiments were done by few cement players, but they have not proven to be effective. So I wanted to explain what the challenges are around that, what we are trying to do, and what industry itself or the policy making itself needs to do for that. The first aspect is on the domestic waste side. So how the world treats a cement plant is it is treated as the last dustbin for all the kachra or all the issues. So what they do is that they have the recyclable, which they can sell or recycle. Then they have the metal pieces or cardboard or valuable items, material, which they can sell or reproduce into a different thing. What they have, that's the third dustbin, which is basically nothing which can be recycled or nothing which could be sold off. Um, they try and give that to the cement plant so they can burn it. And instead of coal, if they burn the same way, there is hardly any emission level. And obviously, this kachra or this waste, instead of going to the landfills, now is used in productive usage. In Pakistan, you would see tons and tons of this waste across our cities, across our country. Just to give you a background, in Karachi alone, 20,000 tons. Our plant is situated between Karachi and Hyderabad. So Karachi alone produces around 20,000 tons per day of waste. And just to give you a context, Power Cement itself, burns 1,000 tons of coal a day. So 20 times just one cement player's kachra is being produced by Karachi. Hyderabad probably 10,000 tons as well. 70% of this waste, and waste is something which has been very close to our heart as well. Waste, 70% of waste which is collected is the rest of them that remains in the city. Obviously, when you see the landfill, most of the plastic bottles have already been stolen away, or let me put it this way, there is pilferage around the recyclable. But the biggest problem with our waste is that we mix the kitchen waste or organic waste with the inorganic waste. So what we find in our landfills, or what we find in our waste management cycle, is that our wet waste, which is just say kele ka chilka, anything which is wet, is also mixed together with the dry waste. So dunya mein there is hardly any good technology, or let me put it this way, कि cost effective technology available कि जिससे आप इतना high moisture और इतना high moisture का कचरे को आप अलग कर सकें. So what we feel is that the reason, say, our cement plant is completely capable of using the waste as a replacement fuel. But the problem with the waste in Pakistan is twofold. One is that it has very, very high moisture level. The second is that globally, the governments or the city councils evaluate it in a way that instead of us picking up the waste and taking it to the landfill, if we give it to someone else, even if we pay them a gate fee, it is still better for us to not throw it in the landfill, because for us to give it to the landfill, for the government, it's still a costly affair. So globally, there is a concept of a tipping fee or a gate fee, where anybody who uses this kind of waste will be, instead of him paying for the waste, we will be rewarded to use the waste itself. This way, even if it is not making super commercial sense at the beginning, people are able to use it, and then slowly and gradually, the waste processing industry evolves. So in Pakistan, obviously, it's virtually impossible for us to convince the government or convince the policymaker that they should pay someone to use the waste. But there has been some development around how to at least evaluate that the waste is available for sale or available to be used free of charge. So there has been some conversations around with our own local municipal waste companies and local municipal authorities, where they will be able to at least give us access to that waste and try and do a pilot with us where we can use that waste to replace our coal. But what needs to be changed is, one, on this government side of the policy. The other is a complete shift in the way we manage the waste at our homes, in our industries, and at our commercial outlets. Obviously, we will not be able to go into a 3-basket or a 4-basket manner, which the world has already adopted, where they segregate the waste since the inception. But what I'm trying to say is that even the educated class like us, or try and do it, mix together the waste and then give it to the authorities or throw it in the nearby um, place which is assigned for waste collection. So the second aspect is the behavioral change. If Pakistan needs to use this waste, and my estimates suggest that the entire municipal waste generated in Pakistan, there is a significant portion which can replace the coal import happening for cement plant in Pakistan. Although these two aspects needs to be sorted out. So just to give you some pictures, this is the 500-acre land in Karachi, the one of the two biggest landfills in Karachi. We went there ourselves. This is our own video, not through the internet. And there is this huge chunk of garbage available, which is obviously with every rain and it gets into a worse to worse state. Obviously, area around these areas are also prone to a lot of diseases, and so there is also a cost of health which we are trying to understand and make a business case out of it, where we can convince the government that they will not just, if they sort out this waste issue, they will just not get the land back. Also, the fact that nearby areas, health bill nearby areas, people's quality of life will also improve. The other aspect is, just to very small thing, but very important. What I wanted to highlight in this slide was the issue is that the waste in any other country would also have the recyclable available for when somebody wants to use it. But in Pakistan, there's a complete informal industry So the outer graph shows that when the waste is collected, it has 23% of the recyclable available, which is mainly the PET bottles or the cardboards or the metal pieces. But when it reaches the landfill, the bottom circle, there's hardly 2.7% left. Why it matters is that then it also means that the waste available at the landfill is also not as valuable or does not have as much heating value available for any cement plant as well. So the best part of the kachra, let me say, is already stolen away before it reaches the final destination. This is again an ADB slide on this issue of Pakistan garbage and the role of the waste pickers. The second aspect, so just to give you a context, the SRF is the substitution, the SRF is the waste derived product which can be used by cement. So, it's almost, 9.3 million tons if the coal consumption is there. The carbon emission would be 5 million tons. And instead, if you use waste, it would probably reduce by half. But in Pakistan, this should be considered in a different way because we don't process the waste, let alone. So even if it's not just half, because the waste itself would go to the landfill and eventually emit the same carbon emissions. So for us, it would be a net saving of the entire coal consumption because we import the coal in Pakistan. So instead of importing the coal, if we use the same waste which is available in the landfills, there would be the entire coal-based CO2 emissions will be reduced. So I've probably skipped this through because I've already explained the challenges around waste collections. On the agricultural waste side, so there are two ways coal can be replaced in Pakistan based on an analysis. One is the household waste or municipal waste. The other is the agricultural waste. So all these agricultural waste, which are shown on your slide, the corn cobs, the maize, the rice, the wheat, in Pakistan, most of it is either burned out or used as, some part of it is used as fertilizer, some part of it is used to feed the cattle as well, but most of it is burned out in the, if you probably travel through the motorways or travel through the highways during the season, you will often see a lot of agricultural waste being burned out because they want to, unko nayi fasal lagani hoti hai. Some footage around how we burn and this is also the reason for, इसीलिए लाहौर में आज जो बैन लगता है पंजाब में during the winter season के agricultural waste को, again the cause of smog, the cause of pollution, all these things. But what we want to highlight is this agricultural waste is also a source of kilocalories or source of heat which can be used by cement plants. Just to give you a context, in Pakistan, around $843 million worth of coal is being imported just by cement players. This I've kept as an approximate 70% of coal is being imported, and 30% of coal the cement players are using the local coal available in the Radam Khel or any other places. So that approximately means that not just to carbon emission, but from a dollar outflow as well, around $1 billion with the coal prices rising, around $1 billion worth of coal is being imported by cement players. So it's not just carbon saving, it's dollar saving, it's import bill saving, and it's also making the use of the locally available products which are going to the waste. So on the agricultural waste side, the biggest issue right now with the agricultural waste and why anybody is unable to procure that through is the supply chain distortion from the rural to the urban, and the processing needed for that waste to reach the cement plants. What we have been trying to do ourselves is that we have directly approached a few big agricultural units or processing units and started taking their wastage and started using that as pilot. So one of the things which we are very proud to say at Power Cement is that if you see the sugar industry, if you go to the sugar industry, what has happened in Pakistan, let me just skip through it. So the sugar industry has one of the waste is bagasse, which they themselves use as part of their own manufacturing, own power generation. The other known as, which is pointed in as part of number one, is the mud or the sludge which comes out of the sugar processing. That mud is approximately 3% of the overall sugarcane production of the factory. That 3% mud was either thrown away or used to sweeten some of the cattle food, or some of it might be used for fertilizing, but it is not. But most of it was thrown away. What we did was that we approached a few cement players, a few sugar players, and directly got them to sell this mud to us, and started doing a pilot with it, how we could use that for improving reducing our coal consumption and improving our cement production on that. So we've done a smaller pilot around that. Approximately 10,000 tons of sugar mud has been used in the last 100 days, where we are trying to do 100 ton per day sampling. Going forward, not just sugar, but rice husk, wheat husk, maize, and corn cob. All these we will try and do in sampling, try and do a smaller pilot around that. And we feel that the next 1 year, at least 10% of our coal consumption could be reduced by using alternative fuel. Obviously, this is a starting point, not the one which Europe or international market has already reached. But what we are highlighting with this is that if there is enough push from us, enough push from the owners, enough push within the own manufacturing industry, will be able to significantly reduce this dependence on coal, and thereby also decarbonizing one of the most difficult industry of cement. So these two aspects, the one efficiency and the one alternative fuels, are something in which Pakistan could target in the medium to short term plan. The other three which I mentioned, the substitution or the substitution of clinker or the novel cement or carbon capture, are very high cost in, and therefore there is a barrier to enter into that market. Obviously, and there is enough change needed at the customer end as well. So one of the reason why Pakistan is unable to substitute clinker from the cement is that the market acceptability of that product is not being established as of now. So what we are trying to do with a few corporates or few people who are well averse with this matter is that we are trying to explain to them that अगर हम कम क्लिंकर के साथ भी सीमेंट बना लें, फिर भी वो इतनी ही मजबूती देगी और आप उसको लैब में टेस्ट कर लें और आप उसको इस्तेमाल कर लें. So the corporates which are more carbon conscious are able to adjust to that. But overall market in Pakistan, it is very difficult for us to convince that this cement made in a different way will not cause any issue to you. क्योंकि इंसान जो है ना वो sorry for using my native language, but इंसान जो है ना वो घर एक दफा बनाता है. So they don't want to experiment कि हम जो है ना वो कार्बन एमिशन कम करने में ऐसी एक सीमेंट यूज करें जो नई टाइप की हो, क्योंकि हमारे अम्मा ने भी इसी तरह घर बनाया था. और प्रोबेबली जो रोम्स की पिरामिड रोम्स की जो पैंथलॉन बना था ना वो भी सीमेंट से बना था. तो सीमेंट तो एक ऐसी चीज थी जो इसी तरह से बन रही थी, तो ये बहुत अच्छी बन रही थी. तो व्हाट बट हम एजुकेटेड क्लास को या वो कॉर्पोरेट्स जो फुटप्रिंट रिडक्शन करना चाहती हैं, या वो जो कॉर्पोरेट्स जो ये समझ सकती हैं कि अगर टेस्टिंग के बाद उनको प्रूव किया जा सके कि अगर सीमेंट को कम क्लिंकर के साथ भी बनाया जाए फिर भी वो उतनी ही मजबूत होगी. सो दैट एस्पेक्ट we're trying to inculcate in Pakistan. Obviously, there is a role of policy making around quality standards or mandatory usage around that. We're far away from that in our country, but globally, there's also been some policy intervention around it where you are not supposed to use that high percentage of clinker unless you can prove that this was needed for a selected high rise or selected skyscraper or a wind project or very high intensive industry. So these were the few things which I wanted to highlight as well. On the carbon capture side, a few projects on the carbon capture side have been tested, which eventually leads to reducing the carbon footprint of cement, despite it being made in the wrong way. But apart from that, there has been no significant cases of carbon capture in developing markets. Last was the novel cement idea. We've been working on that front. A novel cement idea is completely changing the way the cement is made. So one of the technologies recently evolved around calcined clay. So there have been a partnership between academia and industry globally. And in Pakistan also, NED universities, professors have joined hands with some global academia around this front, where a naturally available clay can be used to substitute the clinker available in cement. This naturally available clay has to have high level of calcination. So what we have done is that we found few reserves in Sindh where this kind of clay is available. With partnership with the NED professors here and the Swiss professors globally, we're trying to do a sample project on how this can be made in Pakistan. But again, this could be from a medium to long-term range, 5 to 7 years, where something like this could come in Pakistan, where you could make cement from a 30% clay and give us the same strength as well. So these were the few initiatives which we were taking. What I wanted to highlight was not what Power Cement itself is taking, because जैसे वो कहते हैं ना कि तेज भागना है तो अकेले भागो और दूर तक भागना है तो साथ भागो. So what I wanted to highlight with this SDPI session was not the fact that Power Cement क्या कर रहा है, but cement industry अगर हम सब मिलके कोई ना कोई we come up with a planned next 5 years plan, next 3 years plan on how to solve this, because इसमें सिर्फ सीमेंट प्लेयर का मसला नहीं है, या मुल्क का पूरा एक ओवरऑल कार्बन इमिशन का भी मसला है, मुल्क के इंपोर्ट बिल का भी मसला है, एंड इवेंचुअली उसका एक इम्पैक्ट है क्लाइमेट के ऊपर भी. सो व्हाट आई वांटेड टू हाईलाइट वाज नॉट द फैक्ट दैट व्हाट पावर सीमेंट वाज डूइंग. हमने अपने हद तक की शमा तो जलाने की कोशिश बहुत की है, बट व्हाट वी ट्राइंग टू से इज दैट आप लोगों के इंस्टीट्यूट से या larger voice say how we change the whole industry and the policy making around it. Sorry, I don't know, it was a monologue, most of it, but this was how I wanted to present, and thank you.
Anis, for the comprehensive presentation and addressing the challenges and opportunities you have right now using in the cement industry. And despite the current scenario of high prices and electricity prices and tariffs, you are exactly doing well. The cement industry is doing well despite all the challenges and currently we have. So with this, I would like now towards our next session, that is we have experts who are already working on this section of decarbonization of cement industry. So I would like their interventions or their opinions on what actually they have see in the presentation, what their interventions are. So firstly, I would like to get an opinion from Dr. Ankita Gilbotra. Ma'am, if you could please elaborate us what your suggestions or opinions are. Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. And that was an enlightening presentation, Mr. Anis, and thank you, STPI, for this invitation. What I could do is just start by going over some of the technologies that Mr. Anis also talked about, and it's really good to see that Power Cement is working on some of these technologies, and then move on to some of the barriers that we're seeing globally, and then the policy interventions that we're also seeing being implemented. So starting with technologies, and I'll give you examples of some of the biggest cement producers in the world. So cement producing countries in the world, which is China, India, the EU and the US, and I work mainly in the US side of things, so US climate policy. Starting with clinker substitution, really, really important. I totally agree with Mr. Anis. This is something that countries should be moving forward together on. So China and India are leading there. The clinker substitution, in my opinion, is one of the most readily available technology options, using waste materials such as slag or fly ash, or new, well, I wouldn't say new, but non-fossil fuel-based materials such as calcined clay, like Mr. Anis said. So China at the moment is at 0.64 for its clinker substitution. So that's pretty low, and India is at 0.72. The world average is 0.76. So this is clinker per ton of cement. Then moving on to energy efficiency, really good to see that Power Cement has built new plants and they're extremely energy efficient. I would say that India here is leading, and developing countries tend to lead here because the cement plants are newer, the facilities are newer. And so India's thermal energy intensity is 3.04 gigajoules per ton of clinker. The world average is 3.5 gigajoules per ton of clinker. Power Cement, I think I did a very quick calculation, is at 2.9, which is really great. And India's electrical energy intensity, so this is as an average, is 72 kilowatt hours per ton of cement. The global average is 102 kilowatt hours per ton of cement. The US, just to compare, is at 133 kilowatt hours per ton. And Mr. Anis was saying that their electrical energy intensity is 85 kilowatt hours per ton of cement. So that's good to note. Fuel switching is important, totally agree. Alternative and waste fuels are extremely important to adopt. Developing countries seem to be lagging there. The EU definitely is leading, with 45% of the fuels used in kilns coming from, 48% of the fuels used in kilns coming from alternative or waste sources, which is really good to note. New and emerging technologies include kiln electrification, things like thermal heat batteries. There are some demonstration scale examples coming up around the world. And of course, last but not the least, there's carbon capture, utilization, and storage. This is recognized as imperative for hard to abate sectors like cement to reach net zero, but most remain at demonstration scale phases, and they require significant investment for large-scale implementation. We're seeing a lot of these pop up now recently in the US and the EU. They require various degrees of retrofits and new installations. One emerging technology is lilac in the EU. And then, of course, if we look at the utilization side of things, so Mr. like the video said that Mr. Anise presented, that it's so cement goes into concrete, and then you can cure concrete later with carbon, and so that's where the utilization side of things come in. There are companies like Solidia, Carbon Cure, Blue Planet that are working on things like this. So these are some of the technologies. Quickly moving on to barriers. Like Mr. Anise was saying, there is a lack of awareness of new types of cements, right? It is one of the main barriers that industry faces when it comes to clinker substitution. It's not that the idea of clinker substitution isn't available, or that these waste sources like slag or fly ash aren't available, although over time they will become less and less available, and we'll have to move on to calcined clays and pozzolans. There's also a lack of performance-based standards. There's the cost of new equipment and new installations, some entrenched manufacturing processes. Yes, we've made cement the same way for over a century now. There's the cost of CCUS, even beyond the new installation. So if we talk about transportation of supercritical CO2 and storage infrastructure, and there's lack of permitting. Even in the countries that are implementing CCUS, there's a lack of permitting of geological sequestration. So moving on to some of the policies, some of the main policies that we're seeing coming up around the world are public and private procurement around cement and construction materials, tax incentives, carbon pricing and border carbon adjustments, and grants and loans for new types of tech. And I'll give you some examples of some international policy momentum. So we've seen the Industrial Decarbonization Initiative by UNIDO, which currently has 10 members, including India and the US, with the aim of decarbonizing cement, or using low or net zero cement through government public procurement for cement, concrete, and steel. There's the First Movers Coalition, which is for private procurement. So enlisting big companies to decarbonize the supply chain and use low carbon cement, steel, and concrete. And there are new technology accelerators coming up for CCS plants, such as the Global Cement and Concrete Association's Technology Accelerator. So what should governments do? Well, fund these new and emerging technologies where possible, send strong market signals. So governments tend to be some of the largest procurers of construction materials. So if they say that our intention is to buy low carbon or net zero cement, for example, by 2030, 40, 50, then it sends strong market signals. Carry out permitting reform, collaborate internationally, such as by joining these UNIDO type initiatives, and encourage international financial institutions to provide blended financing for new decarbonization technologies. And finally, what should industry do? Apply for these competitive grants where they're available within governments or through financial institutions, partner with clean energy technology companies to adopt emerging technologies, get involved in policy dialogues like we are here, adopt science-based targets and roadmaps, such as through SBTI, so the Science-Based Initiative, or other types of initiatives like that. Commit to decarbonizing their own supply chains. That's also important. And of course, work and consult with local communities for that buy-in. That's it for me. Thank you very much, and hope that was what you wanted.
Thank you very much, and very pertinently you highlighted the clinker substitution and the transformational, which is rightly needed for the decarbonization of the cement sector and public and private procurement. And especially you stressed upon the word that we need loans, grants but for this cause to be proceed or challenged. Thank you for the right interventions. We have couple of questions in the chat box as well. If Mr. Anise and one of you can want to address. But right now, I wanted to get opinion from Mr. Ahad Mazid, who is the head of Center of Private Sector Engagement at Sustainable Development Policy Institute. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Saleha, and thank you very much, SN and ESOP, for a wonderful presentation. I think we learned a lot about the cement sector, even for someone who totally does not know the value chain. I think you explained it in a way that we all really have a very good understanding now. So I'll just try to focus on some of the aspects that maybe are beyond that presentation, but are very relevant to the overall topic that we are discussing today. I think you started off with a very important note, which was regarding the economic case. I think the producers need to have an economic case for sustainability initiatives, and only then will they go towards them. It is impossible for just to be environmentally and socially responsible and go towards sustainability initiatives, especially in countries like Pakistan, where we don't have that sort of fiscal space where we can just invest into the environment and, of course, social aspects as well. So I think the number one priority that for researchers such as us sitting in this room, I think is that we need to have a very sound economic case for all the recommendations that we make. For all the policy dialogues that are coming out, I think the recommendations will only be appropriated if we have some financial model or economic case to back it up so that the private sector can then adopt it. The other aspect I think we need to focus on is the political economy. So Pakistan has a very difficult set of stakeholders. The consumer group is a very staggered thing, just like Essence have also mentioned that the consumer might not directly be involved unless or until the cost of the cement goes up, and they will not be really thinking about the environmental aspects of that particular item that they are using for the house, maybe just because we only make it once. But I think this is something very important. I believe that the political economy analysis, of course, it is a whole subject, but three aspects are very important. One is that we need to make the consumer aware of the issues. Just like one of the projects that I did back when I was doing my mechanical engineering was regarding the heat capacity and the conductivity ratio of concrete, and it was almost the same. So that is why so cement is not only causing the carbon emissions from the producer end, it is also causing carbon emissions in the form of the cooling and heating load that is being created as in the form of this concrete jungle that we live in. So I think this is the sort of awareness that once the consumer is aware, automatically then the producer will also be willing to move towards these innovative technologies. So normally we have three ways in which we can induce sustainability initiatives in a policy or regulation. One is that the government has a very strong will and they are willing to go for it through carrot or stick. Number two is if your consumers or customers are responsible, and number three is if your investors are responsible. So I think these all three actors will have to work together for a country like Pakistan to have these sustainability initiatives going forward. Then, of course, the cement sector is beyond that production house. If we go back, then there is the mining, that those processes, especially, I hope that there are some improvements now. But I worked in the cement sector back in, I think, 2013. So the mining practices we use are still very primitive and need a lot of focus. So similarly, we can go beyond to the consumption end as well. So I think the whole supply and demand cycle, once that is rationalized, the true sustainability or the true concept of the sustainable development will only be achieved then. The third is, I think, that it's about time. Hasan Saab also mentioned a lot of technologies. I think it's about time that we start localizing them. There should be some incentive that we start to work. We have one of the best cement technology expert probably in the region. I know people that work in Pakistan that have been consulted for projects in India, in Iran, and in other countries as well. So I think it's about time that we sort of get them together and we start indigenizing or localizing these technology initiatives. I think that can again create an economic case in the form of a lower import bill, and maybe we can innovatively improve the existing technology instead of getting something new from outside. One thing, because I'm currently working on the waste value chain, one of the projects that I'm working on is regarding the waste value chain. I think we really need to study the political economy there, the market dynamics of the waste. And I think Hasan Saab also mentioned that I think it's about time that the waste management as an industry should evolve. And that is how I think the waste to heat recovery systems that now almost all the plants have, they can eventually benefit. With regards to renewables, I think, again, we need to have an innovative solution there. There are problems with intermittency. The plant has to run for 24 hours. We can't have maybe have solar backup for that time. And similarly, wind, we only have wind for around 6 months. Last year, we had it almost for 6.5 months. But I think using wind for captive is something that is a very important recommendation here, because wind power plants face the biggest curtailment issue during the last year. So maybe if they can have captive arrangement along with the grid arrangement, I think that will work in a very good way. And of course, I think all of this will eventually translate, and all the efforts that Hasan Saab and Power Cement is putting in will eventually translate into good economic sense once we have a local carbon trading market and of course taxation system, so that we can really appreciate the initiatives, the sustainability initiatives that we have. So I just thought of giving some alternate perspectives, and I can also respond to any questions that you might have. Over to you, Fahid. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. For you rightly pointed out that we need, for sustenance, we need the government will, consumers and investors' confidence and their awareness as well. And also, you have highlighted very pertinent challenges around the decarbonization, which we currently are facing, and we need to tackle it through the collaborative effort as well. With this, I wanted to move towards our next expert, Mr. Sunil Bhaiya, who is analyst at Center for Research on Energy and Clean Energy Air, PRIA. Over to you, sir. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, SDPI, for inviting me and being part of an enriching discussion. It was really good to hear Mr. Anis speaking about various initiatives which Power Cement has been taking, and I agree with all of the speakers that it seems to be on the right track, and there are some real challenges while working on that path. While speaking about this, I would like to, I'll not speak about the technologies which exist or which are in exploration stage, because those has already been covered by Arpita and Anis. So I'll talk about few issues which are cross-cutting across the economic development in Pakistan, its GDP spending, air pollution problem, and what cement sector, while they are transforming themselves, how or what potential do they have in terms of addressing few of these issues. So I'll start with one very primary question in terms of capacity utilization of the cement plant, which also leads to kind of increasing costs of the production, and then ultimately lead to high cement price for the consumer. When we look at that, there is a cycle which has been followed in Pakistan as well as in other geographies, that the capacity utilization of the cement plants remain relatively low, and then we see a boom coming in where it increases or it improves slightly, but even then it is suboptimally utilized. And I think one of the ways how that's been addressed at different places, and which I seem to find very difficult to understand when it comes to Pakistan, is lack of future growth projects and scenarios in terms of what the overall demand for cement would be in a country, looking at which the companies such as Power Cement and others can look at their expansion pathway, which what is the capacity that they need to build, what is the pathway that they need to take at that. And I don't know whether that kind of an assessment is available at the national level for next 15, 20 or 30 years. And in a sense of that, it becomes very difficult to build a capacity which is optimally utilized, and at times it leads to surplus capacity additions, which leads to higher costs, operating costs, and other. Now, the other thing which is very crucial to see, it's not something that the cement industry can't make out in a sense of such assessments being there of how should they grow. We have seen a very close linkage of GDP and cement consumption, which is very well linked to each other. And that's an indicator which is used by multiple countries and companies to look at what the cement demand would be. And therein, if there is a consistency there, obviously, there might also be delinkages to GDP versus cement growth, because the country might move to, rather than manufacturing-based economy, it will move to technology-based economy in a few years, and that's where the delinkages might start. And therein, the question which Ankita was talking about, that the cement manufacturing, the low carbon cement manufacturing can get a really big boom if the public sector or the government starts supporting low carbon cement. And that's where the PSDP expenditures, if you look at them, it might not be that the individual house owners or builders are consuming most of the cement. It is going into large infrastructural projects where the governments will, and their trajectory of what do they want to support, plays a critical role in terms of moving the low carbon cement ahead. So if you talk about large infrastructural projects, road projects, real estate expansions, and industrial expansions as well, those are driven by the government policies. And that's where I think if there is a emphasis given on low carbon cement procurement, there it can definitely give a boom, and that obviously have to be supported by some government funding and finances to the cement sector for developing low carbon cement pathways. While we move on that pathway, we know that the clinker substitution is one of the most prominent ways in absence of carbon capture and storage being a really applicable technology, at least right now in South Asian perspective. Therein, we have seen fly ash being utilized by most of other developing countries as one of the major substituents. As Mr. Anis mentioned, that there are certain challenges, but we know that Pakistan is consuming more and more coal every day in the electricity production as well. There are new coal mines, new coal-based power plants which have come up over the last few years. And if not addressed, fly ash in itself will become a very big nuisance and problem for the electric power sector. And that's why where utilization of this fly ash should be thought about, and cement sector is one of the prominent sectors where it can be consumed as a raw material. And if that's not done, it will be a nuisance for the power sector and the local communities living around that. So there should definitely be more emphasis on including that, and when it's supported by the government infrastructure project development, it can definitely make way into Pakistan cement. The additional to that, when we talk about GHG reduction potential or decarbonization of the cement sector, it is very urgent. It is necessary to do that. But if we link the narrative and messaging from the cement industry to the localized problems of air pollution, to the way Mr. Anis was speaking about reducing the import bills, displacing coal by other resources, then the standing of the sector in terms of accessing finance, in terms of seeing that we are trying to build the nation in terms of reducing GHG, reducing import bills, reducing local air pollution problem, and related to it, health impacts and the economic damage caused by air pollution. So all that messaging can get much more powerful if it is clubbed with each other. And that's where I feel if cement industry, while they are decarbonizing, they are moving away from coal and polluting fuels, as well as they are consuming a lot of the waste which is openly burnt or emits methane in case of residential waste. If all that messaging can be or that data can be clubbed together in this narrative of that the cement sector, while addressing the global climate change problem, will help address the local air pollution problem and the economic damage, avoid the economic damage, that will be a very powerful message which will help the governments, international financing agencies, and even private financiers to kind of come forward and be more readily available in terms of financing the cement sector. The issue there I see right now, and I don't know because my knowledge on that aspect is very limited when it comes to Pakistan's cement sector. The data in terms of either the fuel consumption, be it coal or any other fuel, as well as the emissions, air pollutant emissions, is not being made available neither in the annual reports nor in any other format to the general public, investors, and the global audience. And if that's one fact which is very true is that while we are decarbonizing, we will reduce air pollutant emissions as well from the cement sector. And that's where the public data disclosure on that, when you know that you are obviously going to reduce their pollutant emission, fossil fuel consumption, can help build a very clean, transparent, and forward-looking image for the Pakistan cement sector and power cement. That ways, because of the regulatory process, these emissions are already being monitored. They have been submitted to the regulator. The fossil fuel consumption data has been maintained. It is just putting that out in public domain so that the research community, the financial community, the investor community, and the global sustainability community can see that progress happening on the decarbonization as well as air quality improvements, and that will help the sector be at a position to influence the financier and investors in a more comprehensive and efficient way. So that's where I'll stop. If there are any further questions or clarifications, I'll definitely be happy to answer those. And again, thank you very much, SDPI and Mr. Anis for that wonderful presentation and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. You highlighted very pertinent challenges regarding GDP, cement consumption, and clinker substitution, and also the data availability right now with regards to cement industries. Now, I would like to move towards Dr. Fahim, who is the professor at National University of Science and Technology, NUST. But before I go to Dr. Fahim, I would also like to introduce Mr. Feroz Bey, who is currently working as Director of Industry in National Energy and Efficiency Conservation Authority, NECA. And at the end, I will get his opinion on what they are doing and currently doing around decarbonization. So before that, Dr. Fahim, if you want to intervene, what are your opinions? What are your suggestions on today's topic?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, to SDPI by taking these initiatives, and thank you to Mr. Ahsan Anisab for having this enlightening session. There's a lot of things I learned and I exposed to with the current cement sector scenario in Pakistan. And a lot have been said actually. by all the panelists. They have highlighted various important aspects. So I will primarily focus on or emphasize on mainly the indigenous scenario of cement sector. On the basis or on the derivatives from the Mr. Hassan Anis presentation. So I would say, I mean, there's no question about that. The process emissions are very important, but in my opinion, there are certain constraints, technological constraints or capacity constraints in Pakistan. It's comparatively or relatively, it's difficult to opt for the cement sector in Pakistan to go for substitute for clinker or other type of cement production. However, I would recommend or will emphasize in that we should go for some low-hanging fruit which are available and rightly pointed by the Mr. Hassan through energy efficiency and by utilizing the carbon capture or some, because they don't have impact on the user level as well. So it's easy to implement, one thing. And the second thing is it has multifaceted benefits for the environment and also overall for the emissions and for the decarbonization of cement sector. For instance, if we could manage, can establish a supply chain for agriculture waste, for instance. So it will substitute the fuel emissions, which are imported coal, as you mentioned, 75% coal is imported, which is used by the cement sector. And there's, and on the other hand, these agricultural residue is actually burned in the open fields, so they cause a lot of emissions, not only the greenhouse gas emissions, but it creates havocs, particularly rice paddy fires in the Punjab and Sindh area during the season is coming. So a lot of air quality issues they are also there, which like has caused huge toll on health infrastructure in Pakistan, and also choke the socioeconomic circles through various kind of disruptions in logistic, navigation, and all these things. So if we could establish a supply chain, then we have multiple benefits out of this. The cement sector can get a cost-effective fuel, will reduce emissions in multiple ways. Similarly, so if we could manage to establish this solid waste or municipal solid waste by segregating and establishing, even within the Karachi city, if we could establish a supply chain for segregating at the source, at least, or at some central point, so it can help environment and also so can be a good substitute for as an alternative fuel for energy efficiency in the cement sector and decarbonization. So I guess there should be, I'm very much amazed by the initiative that are mentioned by Mr. Anis, by the Power Cement Limited. They have R&D facilities, they are doing R&D, they have taken R&D initiatives for alternative fuels. And so, but I would like to mention here, there is a huge gap between industry and the academia and the research institutes. If we could bridge this gap, then probably it's a win-win situation for both. And there could be huge potential, and at least the short-term level, we can benefit from this low-hanging fruit, which are readily available to get benefit. So I will stop here, and these are sort of my recommendation, and I would like to offer a collaboration in any capacity to establish a supply chain. Some work has been already initiated at NUST at lab scale or pilot scale, but again, we need some support from industry or collaboration that we can actually extend this to get maximum benefit out of that. And at the end, I would like to ask the question, because these are, my feeling is that these are the initiative which are taken by the PCL or Power Cement Limited. But how is the behavior of overall cement sector in Pakistan? Is that equally eager to go for substitute for the process? to reduce or decarbonize the cement sector, and what kind of the political will or support from the government side is available, or motivation, or any regulatory caps or enforcement is there that can motivate the cement sector to decarbonize? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your suggestions, and thanks for the offer. Definitely, there is a need to synergize between academia, industry, and research institute for the positive outcomes and for the effective research around that. Fortunately, we have public sector with us as well. Mr. Feroz Beg, Director Industry from NICA, they are also working on the decarbonization sector. So what are your thoughts and what are your interventions on today's topic? So over to you.
Thank you, SDPI, for providing this platform to NICA to mention that what are contributions of NICA for industrial decarbonization and energy efficiency. Well, energy efficiency and decarbonization are linked because for every intervention related to energy efficiency, there is an impact on CO2 emission reductions, because our country, and especially the cement sector, is fossil fuel intensive. They are using coal mostly now in the calcination process, and the captive power plant is based on furnace oil or natural gas. Well, in this regard, I would like to highlight that NICA has collaborated with World Bank, and they performed an energy efficiency and decarbonization study for 5 industrial sectors, and cement sector was one of the vital sector in which they collected quantitative data for 4 cement plants, and this study is going to be published soon. Further, to provide a legal cover to the interventions and to the energy efficiency drive, NICA has made an National Energy Efficiency and Conservation Policy 2023, which aims to reduce 35 million tons of CO2 by 2030 annually. And under this National Energy Efficiency and Conservation Action Plan 2023 to 2030 is approved recently by the Federal Cabinet. And under this, for industrial sector, it focuses on a reduction of 2.3 million tons of oil equivalent annually after 2030. And this shall have an impact of 9 million tons of CO2 emissions to be reduced in the sector. The interventions that include in are captive power optimization, and further to in order to make this sector renewable, if CTBCM is implemented by the government, then we look forward that cement factories opt for CTBCM and make their energy, electrical energy totally renewable through it. Further, a study was also conducted for a green hydrogen possibility. This is just a concept study, and it is going to be launched soon for this sector. Waste heat recovery for cement industry is already implemented in most of the sector of cement sector of Pakistan, but there is a need to further check whether if this can be shifted to Kalina cycles, or so that even the low pressure waste heat can be recovered and that can be utilized for power generation. And recently, NICA was also introduced by some industrial people for some additives. And this is a new arena that these additives not only reduce the emissions, but also they increase the calorific value of the coal. So there is a need to study, which NICA is going to launch soon, that whether our kilns are optimized, that they can handle this excess heat by these additives, and whether these additives shall be commercially viable for production of the cement. So these are some interventions that NICA is working on, and we welcome all the participants and experts to give the recommendations to NICA. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your overall work you're doing around the decarbonization. Before I conclude the session, I wanted to request Mr. Anis, if you have any things which you want to add up, or the questions which are already in the chat box, if you want to address them like briefly. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I've tried to answer a few of them online as well. I just want to have one last statement, which was that, generally as a perception, private sector itself making associations, or private sector itself trying to educate or do something policy making to the government is considered a taboo in Pakistan, because we generally, and probably some of it is true as well. Private sector, whenever private sector wants to, say, okay, this is the way government should do it, they say they feel that we will probably be earning more. So I think what the role of policy making, or role of institutes like SDPI or academia is probably a medium where they could probably come up with more accurate policy interventions needed at the government side. They could collaborate with industry, and they could all, because they're more neutral. So I wanted to thank this institute for giving me the opportunity to speak, and these sessions are will probably, it's a drop in the ocean, but it will pave a way for people like you, or anyone who feels that he will not benefit personally from it. Because when we speak to the government, or when we speak to the policymakers, there's obviously a friction, because it could be that we are leading towards something which would benefit more to us than the consumer itself. So thank you on that front. Also, the fact that there are a lot of decisions, or a lot of suggestions on this forum. I would probably personally reach out to a few people and get more guidance around that. Again, I will just repeat, it's not Power Cement, it's the entire cement sector which is trying to better this approach. If not for the carbon reason, mostly for the import and the cost reason as well. But they will eventually move towards this. And inshallah, we will see a better sector in times to come. Thank you.
You have definitely challenges, but you are doing well. So before I can for the final conclusion, I would like to request Dr. Khalid Walid, who is the research fellow at Sustainable Development Policy Institute, for his concluding remarks. And thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I feel educated. I feel like an cement expert after the very insightful presentation by Mr. Hassan. I agree to all the points. I just like to summarize these points, starting from Dr. Wakar's intervention, that there is a long investment cycles in this industry of cement. There is a need to have regulatory framework. We need to have coordination of stakeholders. Then there is a 5E medium-term initiative by the government. We need to align our industry with that 5E initiative. Then provincial government coordination is very important. Special economic zones, we will have to link this initiative with special economic zones as well. And then how we can have this reformed energy transition. Essence have mentioned that solar and wind captive power plants is very important. Coal for heating, we need to replace replacement fuel for this as well. Waste processing industry could be very phenomenal in this endeavor. Then we can save dollars and incentivize and localize and indigenize the industry. Then moving on to our esteemed panelist from India, Dr. Anistika, he mentioned clinker substitution, fuel substitution, private procurements. I remember her fund initiative, which is the backbone of this whole process. Market signals are very important. Engineer Ahad Saab mentioned that we need to have this economic case, which is very important. I cannot stress any more on that. Because in terms of economics or in terms of business, the businessman or the industrialist would take one thing, that is profit maximization. We need to link these initiatives. We need to link sustainability with this profit function. There are two approaches for profit maximization. First is that we start to maximize our production. Our second approach is that we start to minimize our cost. Now there is a dilemma. If we go for sustainability, costs are likely to go up because of the technology intervention. But in terms of long-term profitability, in terms of long-term profit function, we need to invest in this sustainability drive so that our long-term costs are minimized. We need to sacrifice the short-term costs so that the long-term costs are minimized and long-term profits are maximized. So this is the one thing from Dr. Khokhar Shah, academia, policy, and industry linkages. It is very important. We cannot have this work in silos. This approach would not work. This approach would be very short-term approach. We need to have this sustainable policies, sustainable measures coming from academia through think tanks with collaboration of industry, going for the policy intervention so that we have this holistic sort of policy intervention and implementation framework. For implementation framework, I always say there is a 5 steps involved in it. First is introspection, which Dr. Hassan has very elaborately, very thoroughly mentioned, that we need to introspect what are the resources, what is the need assessment of the industry, what resources we have, what are the linkages. And then second step is to integrate. We need to integrate industries. We need to integrate the cement industry. We need to integrate intra-industry. What are different industries associated with this chain? Like Essence have mentioned that agricultural waste is very important if we want to have some alternative fuel in terms of waste to energy initiative. So we need to integrate these industries. Then we need to integrate our supply chain as well. Ahad mentioned that there is a process of this cement industry starts from the mining. So we need to take care of that as well. We need to integrate mining and then production and then all the way from the consumer side. Then it comes to indigenization. If we want to have this long-term process going, we need to indigenize our resources. Localization is very important. To do that, next step is to incentivize. What sort of incentives we are providing to the industry and to the consumer. One incentive is that their long-term profits would be increasing, their long-term costs would be decreasing. Another incentive that government can provide, our industry itself can motivate itself, is the establishment of carbon markets so that carbon credits can be traded and carbon offsets can be traded, so that it provide an additional incentive in terms of so that it strengthens the economic case for these sustainability initiative. Last thing is the implementation, which we need to integrate political economy. We need to have policy consistency embedded in this framework. So this is a 5-step process: introspection, integration, indigenization, incentivization, and all the way to implementation. So this is how we need to have this thing going on. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Dr. Ritika from WRI, Mr. Sunil, Mr. Hassan, Feroz Beg Saab, Nika has very important role to play, and then Fahim Khokhar Saab. Thank you so much for joining us in this sustainable drive. Thank you so much.
Allah Hafiz.